Welcome to this pre-recorded webinar introducing Key Action 205, Strategic Partnerships for Youth. As you may know, funding is allocated from the EU into different streams for the Erasmus Plus programme. These are called Key Actions and are administered by the British Council and Ecodes UK. Together, Ecodes and the British Council are the UK's national agency. For the purposes of this presentation, which refers to Key Action 205, Strategic Partnerships for Youth, the agency you as applicants will need to deal with is the British Council. This information has been produced by Erasmus Plus, the UK national agency which will support you in completing and submitting your application. Please note that guidance produced for the 2019 and earlier calls should not be used for the 2020 call. Let's spend a few minutes focusing on the bigger picture, as the Erasmus Plus programme is much larger than Key Action 2. This may help you to understand the scope of the Erasmus Plus programme. Erasmus Plus is the European Union programme for education, training, youth and sport organisations across all sectors of lifelong learning, including school education, further and higher education, adult education, and the youth sector. The current Erasmus Plus programme runs for 7 years, from 2014 to 2020, with organisations invited to apply for funding each year, and it is broken down into centralised and decentralised activities. The successor programme to Erasmus Plus will be launched from 2021. The Erasmus Plus programme is structured around 5 actions, although only 3 are managed on the national level. The centralised activities are delivered at a European level across all participating countries by the European Commission's executive agency, which is based in Brussels. Centralised projects are larger and more strategic and designed to tackle specific issues throughout Europe. Decentralised activities, on the other hand, are delivered at a national level by a network of organisations known as national agencies. National agencies are themselves overseen by national authorities, the government departments responsible for ensuring the programme is delivered in their country. The UK National Agency is split between 2 organisations, the British Council and Ecodes. The 2 organisations have different responsibilities. However, all higher education projects are managed by us here at the British Council. As the slide says, Key Action 2 supports the cooperation for innovation and the exchange of good practices. These actions are supported: strategic partnerships in the field of education, training and youth, knowledge alliances, European universities, sector skills alliances, capacity building in the field of higher education, capacity building in the field of youth. For more information, see the 2020 Programme Guide, pages 98 to 99. As you can see, some of the key actions are managed at the national level. Others are managed centrally by the executive agency in Brussels. The actions supported under this key action are expected to bring positive and long-lasting effects on the participating organisations, on the policy systems in which such actions are framed, as well as on the organisations and persons directly or indirectly involved in the organised activities. This key action is expected to result in the development, transfer and/or implementation of innovative practices at organisational, local, regional, national or European levels. Strategic partnerships aim to support the development, transfer and/or implementation of innovative practices, as well as the implementation of joint initiatives promoting cooperation, peer learning, and exchanges of experience at European level. Depending on the objectives and the composition of the strategic partnership, projects may be of two types. 1. Strategic partnerships supporting innovation. These projects are expected to develop innovative outputs and/or exchange in intensive dissemination and exploitation activities of existing and newly produced products or innovative ideas. Or 2, strategic partnerships supporting exchange of good practices. The primary goal is to allow organisations to develop and reinforce networks, increase their capacity to operate at transnational level, and share and confront ideas, practices and methods. Each year, the European Commission sets horizontal and field-specific priorities for Key Action 2. These are priorities that the European Commission would like Key Action 2 projects to address, and so in your application, you'll need to address either at least one horizontal priority or at least one field-specific priority. You'll also need to justify these extensively in the narrative part of your application. The programme guide also mentions that among these horizontal or field-specific priorities, national agencies may give more consideration to those that are particularly relevant in their national context, that is to say, the European priorities in the national context. However, please note that while some national agencies provide additional criteria, the UK National Agency has not. Therefore, this point is not relevant or applicable. Here is the list of countries that can apply for funding under the 2020 call for strategic partnerships. Organisations from these countries can also be partners in a strategic partnership project. As a general rule, strategic partnerships target the cooperation between organisations established in programme countries. However, strategic partnerships can involve organisations from partner countries, which are countries outside Europe. Organisations from partner countries can only be part of a Key Action 2 project as partners, not as applicants, if their participation brings an essential added value to the project. This has to be justified clearly in the narrative sections of the application. Please note that if the partner country is not deemed eligible, the entire application will be considered ineligible. If you are planning to include a partner country, we encourage you to strongly consider whether the role could be filled by an organisation based in a programme country. Please note a complete overview of programme and partner countries can be found on page 22 to 24 of the 2020 programme guide. All Key Action 2 projects are organisation-led. Individuals cannot apply directly for a grant, whilst a staff member can complete the application form on behalf of their organisation. The project remains the organisation's responsibility, even if that staff member leaves the organisation. UK organisations leading a project must apply to the UK National Agency. The applicant organisation applies on behalf of all participating organisations. Strategic partnerships in the field of youth must involve a minimum of 2 organisations from 2 different programme countries. There is no maximum number of participating organisations. However, the budget for project management and implementation is capped and equivalent to 10 participating organisations. All participating organisations must be identified at the time of applying for a grant. Partnerships in the field of youth can last between 6 and 36 months, and the project start date must fall between the 1st of June and the 30th of September 2020 for those applications submitted on the 5th of February 2020, or the 1st of September 2020 and the 31st of January 2021 for those applications submitted on the 30th of April 2020, and the 1st of February and 31st of May 2021 for those applications submitted on the 1st of October 2020. All the activities of a strategic partnership must take place in the countries of the organisations participating in the project. Learning, teaching and training activities for learners and long-term activities for staff can only be organised in programme countries. In addition, if duly justified and in relation to the objectives or implementation of the project, activities can also take place at the seat of an institution of the European Union, even if in the project there are no participating organisations from the country that hosts that institution. I will just pause for a moment to allow you to read through the slide. So, over the lifetime of a project, strategic partnerships may carry out a range of activities. Each project will differ in size, composition, and objectives. Youth projects can include the following learning, teaching, and training activities: blended mobility of learners, long-term mobility of youth workers from programme countries, and short-term joint staff training events. If you choose strategic partnerships supporting innovation as your type of project, you can also apply for funding for transnational project meetings, intellectual outputs and multiplier events, exceptional costs and special needs support. As the slide says, the 2020 programme guide has more information. We hope you will apply and we will do what we can to support you. As a first step, we'd urge you to take careful note of the submission deadlines. These are fixed and no late submissions will be accepted. Also, as there are several different calls from other budget streams and key actions, which are due to be submitted on the same day using the same portal, our strong advice would be to submit your application ahead of these deadlines. The lead applicant organisation will apply to their national agency through the EU application portal. If there are partners involved in the application, they do not need to submit the same application to their own national agency. The lead organisation is responsible for keeping partner organisations up to date with the progress of the project application. Please see the above links for application help. We obviously can't replicate the application process here real time during the webinar, so would recommend you begin with your application with looking at the top link first. Then the 2020 Key Action 205 Guide for Applicants. You may have to search for this via your browser as we are having a problem with that link. Then have a look at the application portal as well as the other links above. The Erasmus Plus website obviously has a lot of helpful information, and it's probably advisable if you're a new applicant organisation to take some time and navigate from the top pages of the website down to the registration and application pages. Please note that the organisation ID has replaced the Participant Identification Code, or abbreviated to the PIC. The OID is the new unique identifier for an organisation to apply. Organisations that have already participated in any Erasmus Plus and/or European Solidarity Corps actions managed by the national agency and who had a PIC number have been assigned an OID automatically and therefore should not register again. Always make sure information about your organisation is up to date in the organisation registration system, as this information will automatically be transferred onto the application portal once you enter your organisation's ID. This slide is a portion of the registration page, and you need to follow these steps to obtain your organisation identification, the OID. When you begin the application, there are prompts on how to find out if your organisation already has an OID and how to go about finding that. It is important to note at application stage that if approved, you will be contractually bound to the UK National Agency to deliver your project in line with the information provided in your application form. No deviations from this information will be permitted, as this could affect the assessment result. When completing your application form, please ensure all information presented in the form, including partners, countries, and participants involved, as well as the planned activities, is correct, realistic, and will not be subject to change. It is also important to ensure that all parties involved are aware of their responsibilities and are fully committed to your project. Please allow plenty of time to complete the application form, as it is quite comprehensive. This year's form can be found at the link on the slide here, and you can switch between the Opportunities and My Application tabs on the middle of the left-hand side of the Erasmus Plus site. To begin, from the Opportunities tab, click on Youth, which, as you can see, will lead you to a group of online applications relevant to youth. To enter the application form, just click on the blue Apply button. It may be useful to know that as you work through the form, it automatically saves your work every 2 seconds. You'll also be able to go in and out of the application as you wish, right until the submission deadline. Simply click on the home icon as highlighted in the slide. If you want to close the form and work on it at a later date, you can access the application under the My Applications tab of the Web Applications Forms homepage. We would probably recommend just bookmarking the page for an easy return to your application. Every new online application starts with this welcome message, reminding you of the European Commission's guidelines. We recommend at least a quick scroll through the European Commission guidelines, so you have a good understanding of all aspects of the online form. You can return to the guidelines anytime by clicking on the guidelines in the left-hand side vertical menu. The application for KA205 has got 16 context sections, as you can see. Just very briefly, context refers to the project title, start and end date, duration of the project, national agency, which in this case will be the British Council, and language relevant to your project. At this stage, you will also select the main objectives of your project, that is, either innovation or exchange of good practice. If your main project objective is innovation, you'll need to complete all 16 parts of the application content. With the exchange of good practices, some steps such as multiplier events or intellectual outputs won't apply. In the section for applicant organisations, you'll be completing information about your organisation by entering the organisation ID, OID, that we spoke about previously. All details of your organisation are then generated automatically based on the organisation ID. When entering the OID number, please ensure that there are no spaces before or after. If your organisation has already participated in any Erasmus Plus or European Solidarity Corps actions managed by a national agency, and you already have an OID, then you do not have to register your organisation again. To check your OID, please use the web link provided in the foreword of this applicant section. While this is a fairly straightforward section, I would like to draw your attention to the project contacts and encourage you to nominate 3 contacts straight from the start to avoid filling in additional forms later on. To enter your contacts, please click on the icon as highlighted in the slide here. You'll be able to choose up to 3 topics that are most relevant to your project, and as you'll see, there is a plethora of topics to choose from. This part of your application will also require your comment on your choice of project objective, the context as well as the needs and target groups. In this section of the application, you will be describing how you will select and involve participants in the different activities of your project, and we suggest giving as much detail as possible in terms of the selection process that will be applied in order to choose the participants, as well as how they will take part in the different activities. A useful tip is to please be mindful of the character count within the text fields, as the application form doesn't allow more than 5,000 characters. In the application's preparation section, you may wish to include information on risk management and your approach to ensure safety of participants, partnership coordination activity, baseline surveys to support later impact measurement, communication overall, and promotion to local and wider community about your project. Please ensure you give full details of safeguarding and supporting staff in place in the case of mobility or related activity where minors, anyone under the age of 18, or young people are present. Funds for project management and implementation are provided to strategic partnerships based on the number of participating organisations and the duration of your project. As you can see in the slide, there are certain budgets allocated for the lead organisation and the partners. The application form will automatically calculate the correct funding amount for project management and implementation. Transnational project meetings can be included as part of a strategic partnership project. These meetings should be used by project coordinators from participating project partners for coordination and implementation purposes. You must be able to justify the need for the meetings in terms of the number of meetings and participants involved. In the section for implementation, you should provide details as to how the proposed methodology will allow the partnership to successfully achieve innovative results in its field. You must make clear how the work you and your partners will undertake over the lifetime of the project will enable you to achieve the objectives of your project. You will also need to describe how all partners will communicate, that is, what methods, how often, how you will work together to deliver the different activities and stages of the projects, and how you will communicate with other important stakeholders, who should be identified as far as is possible. Staff costs for management and administrative time are already covered through the project management and implementation budget. These costs may be eligible for funding through the intellectual outputs category if the staff member's role working on the output is distinct from their regular role as project manager or administrator of the project as a whole. You will need to add further details for the intellectual output budget by adding the number of working days for each category of staff time. To be considered as staff for the development of intellectual outputs, the individuals must be contractually linked to one of the organisations in the partnership, either on a professional or voluntary basis. You will only be able to request funding for multiplier events as part of your project if you have listed intellectual outputs. Multiplier events must be directly linked to sharing and disseminating the intellectual output to which they relate. Consequently, they must take place after the intellectual outputs have been completed in order to be eligible to receive funding and to maximise the dissemination potential. Learning, teaching and training activities can be funded in any strategic partnerships project, provided they are embedded within the broader activities and bring added value in terms of supporting the achievement of the project's objectives. You need to make it clear how these activities will contribute to the wider project outcomes. As stated in the online form, Transnational Project Meetings, Intellectual Outputs, Multiplier Events and Learning, Teaching and Training Activities will be listed in this table automatically once you have created them in the dedicated sections on the form. Special costs. A person with special needs is defined as a potential participant whose individual physical, mental or health-related situation is such that his/her participation in the project would not be possible without extra financial support. Any costs requested under this budget heading must not already be covered by the travel or individual support budget headings. Special needs support is calculated on an actual cost basis and will be assessed on a case-by-case basis. The individual situation should be described, and any particular needs and extra costs should be clearly detailed in the application form and in the text box under this section. The awarding of exceptional costs is not guaranteed. Clear and full justification in the application narrative must be given when adding the costs under the exceptional costs budget heading. Exceptional costs can be requested only if they are critical to the success of the project and are services or goods or items that cannot be provided by the organisations involved in the project. Please note you will need to enter 75% of the total amount of the exceptional cost within this section. I would like to draw your attention to this narrative part of your application, as the impact and dissemination sections of applications often score less well and may sometimes be the reason for an unsuccessful application. When completing the section for impact, think about what impact your project is going to have. Try and identify clear and focused objectives, such as target groups for your project, and consider both tangible and intangible results. You should also be clear as to how you will measure this impact. To disseminate effectively, it is important to have a plan which answers these 6 questions. Why, what, how, when, whom, and where to disseminate. You should refer to your dissemination plan in your application and relate this to the impact of your project and deliverables. If you look back up to the top of this slide, there are 2 links. We'd recommend taking time to look at both of these, as there are lots of ideas and ways described to address the impact and dissemination parts of your project application. The second link will take you to sector-specific case studies, and these may be helpful in shaping your project ideas and getting a feel for what is possible. Project budget summary. This section provides an overview of the activity number, activity type, and grant requested for the project. The values shown in the budget summary are calculated automatically on the basis of the values calculated and/or entered in the detailed budget sections. Please note, if you miscalculate your budget and request less than you are entitled to, you will only receive up to the amount requested. Therefore, you must ensure that the budget provided is correct and consistent with the activity described in your application form before submitting your application, as the UK National Agency cannot award any funding above the amount requested. An Erasmus Plus grant is made up of 6 budget categories, which together make up your total grant amount. Project management and implementation funds will automatically be added to your grant total, as it is calculated according to the length of your project. You can see on the screen the wide variety of activities it could be used for. Transnational projects are used for partners in the project to meet and coordinate the project. However, you will have to justify the need for your meetings in terms of number of meetings and participants involved in your application. Meetings should be limited, and consideration must be given to whether it would be possible to conduct the meeting over Skype rather than face-to-face. The two categories shown on this slide are based on real cost. This means that you can enter any amount into the box within the application form. Before doing so, however, it is important to consider what you are applying for is eligible. Has it been justified within the application, and does it demonstrate value for money? Special needs support is directly related to participants with disabilities and accompanying persons. Special needs support cannot be claimed for after the application stage, so you must claim for it in the application if you think there is a high possibility it will be needed to support participants with disability to take part in a mobility activity. Award of exceptional cost funding is not a given, and clear and full justification must be provided in the application. As you can see in the slide, exceptional costs are based on actual costs and must be supported by invoices and receipts at final report. Before requesting exceptional costs, please check whether the costs cannot be covered under any other budget categories, most likely the project management and implementation budget. Exceptional costs can be requested only if they are critical to the success of the project and are services or goods or items that cannot be provided by any of the organisations involved in the project. Intellectual outputs are activities requiring substantial staff input in order to produce significant outputs. To distinguish the production of such outputs from those covered by the funding automatically awarded to a project for project management and implementation, these outputs will have to be set out in detail, demonstrating clearly the concrete outputs and the related effort put into producing them. The outputs should be innovative and creative and be developed with a clear aim of transferability or usability to organisations other than those participating in the project. Please note that it's only considered intellectual output if the potential for wider use and exploitation, as well as for impact, is proven. The production of an intellectual output is a process consisting of different steps that finally lead to the actual output itself. For example, conducting an analysis, researching, translating, etc. These steps by themselves are not considered separate intellectual outputs. Staff costs for managers and administrative staff are already covered through the project management and implementation budget, but may be eligible for funding if their role working on the intellectual output is distinctly different from their regular role as project manager or administrator of the project as a whole. Again, a clear justification must be provided. When selecting whether the staff time should be considered as a manager or administrative staff, you will need to consider the role the individual has regarding the intellectual output, rather than the role they have in the organisation. For example, if you have a director of a company undertaking administrative duties for an intellectual output, you should select administrative staff to reflect the role they have on the project, and not manager to reflect their usual day-to-day role in the organisation. To be considered as staff, the beneficiary has to be able to demonstrate the formal link between the staff and the organisation, usually via a contract. You will also need staff timesheets, evidence of the person working at the organisation, and tangible evidence of the output itself. Staff working for the beneficiary on the basis of a service contract, for example, translators, web designers, etc., are not considered as staff of the organisation concerned. Their working time can therefore not be claimed under intellectual outputs. Regarding multiplier events, multiplier events are only available to projects that are producing intellectual outputs. The aim of a multiplier event is to share intellectual outputs to individuals and organisations outside the Erasmus Plus project. Multiplier events should disseminate and increase the impact of intellectual outputs. Other dissemination activities will be supported via project management and implementation funds. Multiplier events are events organised by the partnership, for example, conferences, seminars, or meetings, that are directly associated to one or more of the intellectual outputs developed through the work of the project. If you are not planning to hold any multiplier events, you do not need to complete this section. However, if you do not fill in this section, you cannot request funding retrospectively. The aim of a multiplier event should be to test, implement, or disseminate the intellectual outputs to a wider audience. Multiplier events should involve a large number of participants from organisations that are not already involved with the partnership itself. Such events can be organised at national or transnational level. However, multiplier events can only take place in the programme countries in which the beneficiaries are located. Both the profile and number of participants will have to be justified, as well as the approach to attract and involve the relevant external organisations and stakeholders. Project summary. In this section, you are asked to provide a summary of your project. In the event that your project is awarded, this summary will be publicly available. You will also see the summary of the budget that you are applying for. The budget summary information will be automatically pulled from the budget section that you had to complete earlier. There are 2 mandatory documents that you'll need to submit as part of your application for KA205. These are the Declaration of Honour and Timetable. For both, please use the templates provided in this part of the application. Please ensure that all documents are submitted electronically with the application. All documents should be signed by hand in ink. No electronic signatures can be accepted. You may also wish to attract other documents to support your application, however, this is not mandatory. The last section, checklist, is there to ensure that you have completed all the compulsory parts of the application. You'll need to tick all boxes, including the data protection notice at the very bottom, in order to complete this section. Please note that only the person completing the application will be able to submit it, unlike people with whom the application has potentially been shared to co-work on. You will not be able to click the Submit button until all sections of the web form are complete. You will receive a confirmation upon submitting the application. You should submit your application only when you are happy with the finalised version. However, any time before the deadline, you can return to your already submitted application under My Applications tab, correct and resubmit. All applications are first checked for eligibility. Applications that are eligible are then taken on for further assessment before an award decision is made. It is essential that you understand how your application will be assessed in order for you to write a high-quality Key Action 2 application. The assessment process is carried out in 2 stages. The first stage is the formal eligibility check, and this is undertaken by the UK National Agency staff. The second stage, is the qualitative assessment of the application, and this is undertaken by external experts. Please note the overall budget for Key Action 2 is limited. Funding decisions are made based on the quality score. Approved projects will be ranked in terms of their overall assessment score. The programme budget will be allocated from the highest to the lowest scoring project until the budget for that activity type is fully distributed. Much more detail on the assessment criteria is available in the 2020 Programme Guide, page 110, and in the Guide for Experts, which is the guide for the assessors, and this is useful to gain insight on what is being looked for. To be considered for funding, proposals must score at least 60 points out of 100. You must score at least half of the maximum points in each of the categories. That is, a minimum of 15 points each for relevance of the project and impact and dissemination, and a minimum of 10 points each for quality of the project design and implementation, and quality of the project team and the cooperation arrangements. As previously mentioned, proposals that do not address at least one priority of the action will not be funded. Regarding notification and when you will hear whether your application has been successful, the indicative date of notification of award decision is 4 months from the submission deadline. The indicative date for signing a grant agreement is 5 months from the submission deadline. For all successful organisations, the notification of results email will outline the dates when it is aimed to complete the contracting process. We are only able to issue grant agreements once all of the necessary contracting documents have been submitted and accepted. Full details about the documents that need to be submitted to support the contracting process will be outlined in the contracting instructions issued to projects following the notification of results email. Finally, please feel free to contact us via the routes above. We are here to help. Thank you for listening and good luck with your application.